together and gives you cards. And I remember as a kid kind of looking around at these kids that had birthdays when they were at school, and I didn't have the experience. And a lot of times when my birthday came around, friends were away for summer vacation, or, it just didn't happen for me that way. And I felt in my life, for more reasons than just that, like I was kind of on the outside looking in. And one year, I think grade 6, it was just before the end of the school year, and I got some flash of like, no, I'm gonna organize something for my birthday before all my friends go away, and it's gonna be great. And I want to feel more connected with the people that I have in my life. And so I did. I kind of told everyone, and I made phone calls, and I went shopping with my mom, and we got snacks and drinks, and I kind of planned it all out. And I was super excited about it. And then, so I told everyone to show up at 7, and 7 came and went, and no one was there. And then 7:45, and then 8, and 8:30, and then by about 9 o'clock, I was like, they're not coming. And so I was devastated, obviously. And I called a friend of mine that was supposed to be at the party, and I said, hey, like, where are you? I thought you were coming to my birthday party. And he said, oh, I won't mention names, but these 2 girls in my class called everyone and told them that the party was canceled. And it was staggeringly painful for me. I couldn't, and it was the end of the school year. And so there was no kind of next week to kind of figure things out. I was just left that summer with that experience. And again, it wasn't just that experience. Gabor Mate loves to say, trauma isn't what happens to us. It's something that happens in us in response to what happens to us. And it was like that for me. It was like the events played out in me over and over. And because of some of the backdrop of my earlier childhood, I was like, still in me, if I'm going to put myself out and kind of gather people together around something that I'm doing or I'm interested in, like I can feel it in my system that, this doesn't feel safe. So that's a piece that was, it sticks out in my childhood as a painful moment. And, I would say an exercise that I've come to that helped me bridge the gap in terms of, I could easily, and actually I did for many years, just not put myself out. Like the solution, you put yourself out and it doesn't go well and it's really painful. The solution is, well, you just don't put yourself out anymore. So I did that. But I realized, and I had some really supportive people in my life go, the old saying, life is too short. And so one of the exercises that I've used to get over the hump of fear or anxiety or resistance to putting yourself at risk again, and because life inherently has risk in it, I call it the deathbed exercise. And so maybe trigger warning, but I'm going to go there. And that is, we live in this modern culture that essentially keeps death in the dark corners. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about it. We act and behave as if we are not mortal creatures. And I think there's an incredibly powerful benefit to bringing ourselves face to face and heart to heart with the reality of our mortality. I won't be here forever. And if I bring myself to the end of, like, an imagined end of my life, whatever, tomorrow, next year, when I'm 99 years old, and I look back on my life, how do I want to see myself making choices and behaving? What sort of life do I want to lead? And there's something about that exercise, that kind of retrospective perspective, that plugs me into, I don't have time to wait. I don't have time till a better time, a more safe time, a more comfortable time to do the things that I know in my heart I want to do. So that's a really simple one that I think everyone can take with them, that, again, it's not to be reckless. It's just to be honest that this is a gift. And it's a cliche because, we know that it's actually true. So that one, the deathbed exercise, I think is a really simple, powerful way to get ourselves to the point of, what do I really want? And what do I really want to do here, in spite of the fear or resistance that might be there?
I love how deeply and vulnerably you both shared. Thank you for sharing your your pains. That is those are painful experiences. I was like, no, why would they do that? People are so mean. I just don't understand. It doesn't relate in my mind. Like, I don't get it, like, how people can behave in such ways. So thank you for cultivating your lives and your skills and sharing them with the world. You too, Scott. Wow, for me, I don't actually really want to share a specific, like a specific trauma, because it's not like it's just, there's some early childhood stuff, and that some of it's pre-verbal that I can't really access in a way that I can tell you about it, but I can say that I've created it over and over and over and over and over again. I can generalize some things that I've had a lot of, my father was pretty emotionally distant. There's some 7-year-old stuff where he just like stopped like actually connecting with me and hugging me and never said anything about it, like never told me about it. So I was like left kind of like, what the fuck? It's because of me. I've been bad or something, whatever, magical thinking or tragical thinking, as I joke. And then there's some like abusiveness with my mother, who, didn't have access as a single mom to really find these ways of like, cultivating healthy understanding or communication skills with a pretty wild only child who was, like, I was out there. Along with, not only just being kind of like the social constructs of being alive and how we're like told to behave socially, abusive relationships, of course, any sort of like the avoidant, anxious attachment things kind of played out, because that's, I played those out in my early relationships, because I was trained and socialized to be codependent and to be female in a Montanan society and culture. So in that, after a couple of deep, challenging sexual traumas, I don't have to say the words, but after those, I started to really find myself not understanding how the world works and safety in my body. I'm totally relating to Mike over here. Like, safety? What's safety? Like I realized that there was a lot of places where I wasn't safe in my body or safe trusting myself in my choices, because I didn't really know how to be authentic or how to be or how to own my truth. Like, again, there's a lot of social programming for being a woman, that I'm there to please other people, to behave in such ways. And this is the programming that was passed down from my familial matriarchal lineage. And that's where I started to really get into I got curious. First things first, I had to get rid of the nightmares of the violent experiences. And thank goodness for hypnosis and Doreen Blumenfeld of Willits. Like, thank God for that. Like that was like the first thing that's tripped it up. And I was able to start to rationalize some things that were going on. Like, oh, I can sleep, meaning like I'm now in my body, at least sometimes. And I found holotropic breath work, which was a profound tool for me, because I didn't actually have to access the traumas itself. I could just let my body and my brain do the thing through just my breath. And then that's how it started. I mean, I've been on that path for over 15 years now, and I'm evolving. The things that I want to share with you tonight are, I've been bouncing with a couple of them. And one of the things that I really do want to share is aspecting. And I mean, I have a couple things, maybe I'll share this one right now, but aspecting with the experience itself, or for some of us who have trauma, we part ourselves out. and that might look like my fear or my anger. We'll talk about my anger. When I was 26 years old, I became friends with that because I was like, you know, my mom was really angry, and that was the first thing that she would come to. And I remember saying to myself, very young, maybe 7, I will never let anger be my first response. Well, you know what that happens is that I stuff all anger. And did you know that there can be healthy anger? There is healthy anger. It's okay. Just don't direct it at people and don't hurt others. And don't direct it at yourself and don't hurt yourself. But we can go into that another time. And really, when I started to aspect with my anger, to aspect with those parts of myself that I had pushed aside, and really to allow them to integrate into my being, that's when things started to really shift for me, because I was no longer saying it's all good, or the, you know, bypassing aspect of just think positive thoughts. If you have CPTSD, thinking positive thoughts can be so re-triggering that it can just like. So what is aspecting is like, it looks like this. So here's Trish, here's me, and then here's another part of self. This is my anger, and I get to speak to my anger, like, oh Trish, or oh anger, I'm afraid of you. You're terrifying. You're gonna hurt people. And then I allow myself to be anger and speak to Trish. And it's a Gestalt tool. I'm sure it happens in other, you know, psychological works in the world. But this is the piece that really helped me have a dialogue with it and really to make friends for the first time. And it no longer was my anger, but it was me. It was my acceptance of that piece, and I could allow it to come into my body and not be a harmful place or an expression of self. And that's the one thing that I want to like just pin for you guys is aspecting it. There you go.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all of you for, you know, sharing vulnerably. I'm not going to go long because I really want to hear from the three of you. People get a lot of Scott Catamas, so I'm going to be brief. Traumatic events that I've had in my life have basically led me to radical acceptance, recognizing that when I can fully accept, oh my God, this thing has happened, whether it was the death of my wife or other traumatic events that have happened in my life. Ultimately, the tool is absolute presence to what is, and recognizing that we cannot change the past, but we can change our relationship to the past. And when we are fully present to what is, even when it fucking hurts, even when it's so not what we want, the more that we can, it's kind of like when you're swimming in the ocean and a big wave comes, you know, you go towards the wave and you go underneath it and you let the wave pass. And so that's, I just what I want to say. And because I'm in the change business, people pay me to change. Usually they pay me to change their husband or change their wife. So no, that's not quite how it works. I can help you.
Instead, you change their life.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, true change, everybody, is built on a foundation of radical acceptance. Radical acceptance of who I am, what's happened to me, my epigenetics, my ancestral history, my environmental history, my physical limitations, whatever they might be. So with that, I wanted to kind of as the next question for really all three of you, what's a way that you support clients that you're working with that have heavy duty trauma, that maybe think they're broken, maybe they're lost in the story that I'm damaged goods, I'm broken, I'm fucked up and I'll always be fucked up. My family were alcoholics and I'll always be an alcoholic. Any of that kind of rigid, stuck belief system stuff that obviously can come with trauma. I'm curious how any of you might want to offer how you support someone out of that story. Mike.
So the way I work with people is helping direct them into their bodies so that they can feel into the foundation of where their emotions and where their thoughts and their beliefs and everything come from foundationally. What's going on in the nervous system? How can they recognize that? So a lot of what I do is education so that they can have some sense of, oh, I'm feeling this experience right now emotionally. I can locate it in my body. Oh, this is what I'm thinking over and over again. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. It's connected with this constriction in my chest and a sense of sadness or frustration, perhaps, maybe fear. And once they can recognize what's going on there and go, oh, if I direct my attention in my body and allow it to process, then it will actually work it out itself. So the interesting thing is that from my point of view, I'm not saying the cognitive and emotional processing modalities aren't effective, but foundationally, when you get to the body level and you change the neural platform upon which people are operating, so much more possibility is open. And through that process, there's an acceptance and a presence with the experience they're having, where they can distinguish that from what originally happened, perhaps a trauma, perhaps implicit trauma, meaning it's in their body and they're having sensations and maybe thoughts that they think are related to now, but really it has to do with something that happened long ago, that they had a cue, an associated cue in their environment, trigger that in them, and they think, oh, I just have low self-esteem. No, not necessarily. Perhaps what happened is that when you were young enough that your parents were meant to be in a, when I say meant to, what I mean is how our human development optimally functions. So ideally, parents are there to support and accept the experience that the child is having so they can process it, so they can learn from it, so they can grow. And so often, going back to the present moment as an adult, what will happen is they'll think, okay, I'm having this experience of I'm not good enough. Okay, well, where is that in the body? And let's be with that. And in the experience of noticing what the breath is doing, noticing the sensations, and noticing perhaps how they are or are not moving and how they can move, we can move through, literally and figuratively, this experience by accepting and being with and cultivating awareness. So it's a body level experience that allows this new platform, neural platform, from which that they can start to experience life in the present moment more fully. Whereas before, they might have had this implicit memory. Very often this happens. We'll think that what's going on right now in our bodies, for example, anxiety, it's a survival response. And more or less what's going on is that the nervous system has an elevated stress load and it's showing up as, let's say, tension in the neck and shoulders and a sense of fear or a sense of worry about what might happen. And then the thoughts that go with that. If you can connect to what the body is doing there and allow the body to go, oh, my body's doing what it thinks it's supposed to do. Let's work with it. In a sense, Aikido, an experience of going with rather than resisting. And through that experience, what they'll find is, oh, I know where I am. And even though I'm uncomfortable, I know it won't stay there, especially after we've practiced this a number of times. And they start to get this sense of competency, like, oh, I don't feel so great right now. I'm feeling anxious. And okay, let me just connect to the body. And they get to this place where they can start to get a sense of, oh, this isn't, not only is it not permanent, but I know I can change this. I've done it before paradoxically, by allowing it to be as it is. And so I could go on with a number of different techniques that I do to achieve that, but that's the gist.
Well, I love that. And I love the kind of the acceptance part of it again. Like, okay, my body's having a reaction. This isn't bad. This doesn't mean there's something wrong. My body is doing what my body does in a situation like this. And quite often, even if we're in discomfort, our body is still taking good care of us. I always find it interesting when people talk about when they have a fever and they say, oh, I'm sick, I have a fever. No, actually, a fever is your body getting well, right? A fever is the body doing what it does to actually get rid of whatever needs to be handled. It's actually a healing experience, not a getting sick experience. And I'm kind of now imagining it's kind of similar with the way you work with people and people's body reactions.
Yes, absolutely. And Funny enough, just going into how I came into this through the back door of fitness, you might say, as far as an occupation, what I found is the most profound work that I've done with people comes from people who come to me and they just want to achieve certain fitness goals. But inevitably, what they'll run into is an experience in their body, a blockage of some sort, or some sort of resistance, something that's not working, aches or pains or tension, or even anxiety that they're now recognizing in their body. And through the process, they start to recognize not only how to shift those things, but they can develop skills of how to move, how to get stronger, more flexible. And through the process, they end up processing trauma as they get more fit. So it's pretty cool how it all sort of goes hand in hand. And like you mentioned in the beginning, my title is the Everyday Consciousness Coach. How can we notice in every moment where there's an opportunity to be more present, to move, to breathe, to sense in a way where we're here fully now? And there are always deeper layers of doing that.
It's so good. I'm loving meeting you, Mike. You rock.
Thanks.
Well, we met Mike actually through Dolphin, and I'm going to put the spotlight on Dolphin next, and hear what you have to say about this part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say, and so to pick a spot where it feels like it's rich and alive. I think if someone's working with me, they have a deep love and interest in authenticity, in beginning to face the pieces that they haven't been facing. So in a way, the way that I set up my coaching, the way that I, it's not that I screen people, but I'm not interested in coaching anybody that comes in the door. I'm interested in coaching people that understand me and how I work and what I'm interested in, and that there's a kind of alignment and synergy in terms of what I offer and what they're looking for. Not every coach is for every person. So that's a piece. It's like the stage setting that I think is maybe underappreciated or undertaken care of in the coaching world. It's like, oh wait, like how do we make sure that what I do and where my strengths are the things that best support you in your journey? So there's definitely a stage setting piece that I find strengthens and makes more potent the work that I do with people. In therapy, in a lot of the kind of therapeutic modalities, they talk about something called the window of tolerance. And that's this sort of bandwidth, this space within which someone is able and willing to engage what's going on. And that when someone is outside of that window of tolerance, things tend to run unconsciously. And so, a couple of the ways that other than the preparation and the stage setting that I do, some of the ways that I support people is I was working with someone this week, an educator that is a dear friend, and he says he loves to say the issues are in the tissues, and I think Mike I'm sure is familiar with the saying, and what's amazing about that somehow our body is a kind of repository of memory and states and predictive mechanisms, and that because the issues are in our tissues and this vehicle of our body is the vehicle we use to kind of manifest the world and the relationships around us, we will find endless opportunities in our day-to-day to work with all of our unintegrated stuff. So one of the approaches I love is just to kind of have a weather report at the beginning of sessions. Some of my clients are really clear on outcomes and goals that they have, and things are mapped out much more specifically, and that's fine. But some of the most powerful work that we can do is when we simply become attuned to the signals in our life and in our relationships that are calling for what is naturally next for us. Anyone who's done a lot of work knows that life is not random. And when things blow up, when physical or emotional stuff flares up in us, when relationships start to hit the skids or go sideways, these are all indications of something much deeper at play. So I like getting my clients in the rhythm of a weather report that is kind of listening for what's familiar here. It's possible for anomalous things to happen in our lives where it's like, wow, this is just so different than everything else. But 99% of the time, we're kind of seeing reruns, like some dynamic, some relational issue, some argument, some feeling in our emotional world or our physical body. And again, our body and the system of life itself is so brilliant. It actually is naturally bringing the right things forward of what's ready to be reintegrated. And so then what we can start to do is, oh, this piece, I know this one, like what's going on here? So instead of your boss does something that drives you crazy and yelling or kind of talking about them behind their back for a week, we can start to ask questions like, what does this remind me of? So I know this is my boss and I'm a 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old something. And the obvious circumstances there in front of me, but it's more like a template or a blueprint. And so we can start to track back. If I'm really stuck, is there a recurring theme of this in my life? Or when's the last time I felt this way in my body? Or if we want to do deeper work, when's the first time I felt this in my body? And the further back we go, the more to the root of our patterns and our issues in the tissues we get to. And one of the things that I know is that the therapeutic relationship, which is so well documented in terms of effectiveness of practitioners working with clients, what that really is for me is that the client trusts. And so there's something powerful that happens when we give our trust to someone interpersonally. And I think it helps the therapist do their work. But there's something that happens in our nervous system when we know we're in the presence of someone that we can relax around. And so when the therapeutic alliance is really strong and someone is ready and willing to start to dig into the earliest pieces that remind them of the things that are currently cycling in their life, now we can start to play. Now we can start with a kind of levity. We can start to go, oh yeah, like this thing that you've been doing for 30 or 40 years, is that really what you want to do? Like when someone does X, Y, or Z, is that really how you want to respond to it? And then I don't call it expecting, but the work I do is heavily influenced by my mom's work, and she worked with a Gestalt therapist for a number of years. And so there's sort of the kind of psychodrama piece of Gestalt that has expecting flavors to it. I love giving people a chance to play parts. And I'll just say one more thing, because I think it's super potent, which is when we really get how intuitive and intelligent and transformative that kind of aspecting work is, what we start to recognize is not only do we have parts, but we start to recognize that there is a kind of part of us, or maybe a level of us, that's the holder of the parts. And it's not even ourselves. It's not the dolphin, this person I've learned to be in my life over the 43 years I've been on the planet. That's another aspect of me. My sense of self is just an aspect of what I really am, which is deeper and broader than that. When we get that we are a kind of living, dynamic, autonomous container for all of our parts, that's when we can start to, I worked with another educator this week, and she talked a lot about reparenting. And to me, that's what the healing work is that we realize I'm a bigger container for everything in me and of me. And I can start to provide a loving, holding environment for all of those parts to be seen, known, loved, and through that to become integrated, which is what Gestalt is really all about.
These are just beautiful, safe men. I don't know if that's how you gender. I didn't mean to misgender you. Sorry, but these are just
I'm okay.
Just beautiful healer souls. Geez. And I'm hearing so many of the similar tools and similar, I'm sure that you choose to show up in different ways with aspecting or the Gestalt or the, embodiment practices. We all have the way that we do it. And again, I just want to say thank you for bringing in each coach has their own specific style, and we're not for everyone. Like the way that I do it is not the way that maybe someone who comes to you will learn the best, or who comes to Mike will learn the best. It's just like and Scott has his own very specific style, and I'm a little feistier, and so I mean it just is. We can be real here. Gosh, I just love this conversation. It just delights me. This is the conversations that that fill me. what my main work in the world, again, is really helping to see how we're socialized as codependent in sort of monogamy, or in the way that our nervous system is kind of like the way that we've trained our bodies, our nervous system, our styles, what we want. I think a lot about that. And what I wanted to mostly say is that I think that we're all pattern interrupters. We help people, well, I do, I'll speak for myself. I help people see the patterns, become aware of the patterns that they're continuing to cycle. And there's a lot of empowerment just in that piece, is when someone can see that they're the creator of this experience, and they can see it start to unfold in the macrocosm of their life, that they're literally the piece, they are the one, that it starts to help them see what they want. And I'm just wondering how I want to go here. This is kind of controversial, and I know you both are gonna know why it's controversial. I'm really for people taking self-responsibility for how they create their traumas again and again and again in their life. Now, and why I'm saying this is that I had to really, for me to actually access new growth in my life, I had to really get real and authentic and honest about how my attachment style and how I recreated the wound and forced other people to play it out with me through fawning or manipulation techniques that I created in my early childhood to get my needs met. And this is what I meant by self-responsible, is that I had to be like, oh God, who's the common denominator in this situation? And that's one of the things that I really offer my clients, is to take huge self-responsibility for how they're creating it. And it's not in this way to be shamed or to feel guilty or blame themselves, but really in a place, in a container of compassion. And through that is really one of Scott's, tools that it took me 30 years, 35 years almost to find this one tool of self-empathy. And that has really taken me that was the one piece, self-empathy, how to how to take your thoughts, access your feelings, really honor them, to really just feel your feelings, to be embodied in that experience, and then to give yourself the opportunity to really address what the want and the need and the value that's up for you right then. And then, Scott, I run it the way I run it. I'm so sorry. that from that place of being able to access what my want and my need is, because I'm coming from this understanding of my own codependent behaviors and how I've kind of accessed other people's meeting my needs, is I've really accessed that place. And I teach people that place of how to self-source to a point where they can get to the point where they're as full as they can get without asking another person, and then to be conscious and aware of asking another person for exactly what they want and need in that brave, courageous space. So self-responsibility through self-sourcing and self-compassion. And I also, and this is just one thing I want to drop in, and maybe you guys, we're going to go to another spot that I've been also really thinking about the word healing. And I don't use it in my practice, because what I find is that when people come to me and they're wanting to do their healing work, is that they have this deep belief that they're broken. And I don't believe, I just won't, again, I've come from some deep, deep things that have happened that I have taken on and I used to believe that I was doing my healing work, and I believed that I was broken. And that word specifically, I had to really shift that to transformational work for me, because I couldn't move past the quote unquote healing work, because bones break and they heal. And I'm not talking about there's ways to really psychologically just destroy your mind and lobotomy aspects, but I'm not talking about those things. People who are coming to me are wanting to move forward and transform their lives and the way that they move in the world. I want to move into a conversation about how we as a community can support each other. I've been thinking a lot about this aspect of, there's the doing the self-work, right? And I think that that's, again, self-sourcing and self-responsibility as the first movement towards personal growth and personal transformation and self-love. And the role of community and the role of relationship and how we can, really but the role of relationship as a form of transformation and of healing our attachment wounds and really like being trauma informed as a way to love better. So I'd love to just kind of like, I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to throw it to you guys.
And you know what I'd like to do, and it kind of goes along, I want to read a couple of the comments from our audience. And then kind of take what Trish just said and some of the comments and see where Mike and Dalton want to go. Thank you, Mark and Penny. They both basically say that they are really taking it in and appreciating all the information. And this is definitely one of our deep shows, a lot of deep information. Kathy writes, and thank you, Kathy, for your vulnerability. She writes, I resonate with all of this information, and I'm still working on my own issues, especially PTSD from trauma and abuse. It's so difficult to feel safe. I haven't been in a relationship for over 20 years because of this. And that particular comment I wanted to just bring up because it's so vulnerable and tender. And people that, because of their history, have to live in a state of hypervigilance. It's so important for those of us. I'm lucky. I'm a 6'2" white man with parents who loved him. Okay. And so I've had to learn to really be grateful for how blessed my life was and understand why people are hypervigilant, why people don't trust automatically or may not trust as easily as I want them to. So taking kind of what Kathy brought up or what Trish had to say, take it away.
I speak to one little thing. Kathy, from someone who, you've been listening, that there is more than hope, that there is, things can change. And I'll give you like a really brief story is that, so I go into big trauma trigger states. It doesn't happen very often anymore because I can, I can walk it back enough. But when I do, I'm able to now access this moment. So I was in a trauma state recently, knowing that I'm in it, and I could access it in that moment. I said, okay, to the person that I was with, I know that I'm thinking irrationally right now. I'm in a trauma state. I'm hyper alert. My body is shaking. I just explained my experience, and I said, I know that I'm not rational. So what I need from you is to not take what I'm saying personally or this experience and just to give me the space to let my body do what it's going to do, which is like, I got out of the car and I let my body freak out. And then I started to shake, the trauma shaking. And I just, again, I freaked the person out. Don't get me wrong, but at least I was prepared to. And what shifted in that moment was that I was able to take ownership of that, which was really self-responsible, to let that person know that I was in it. And I was able to, at that moment, say, okay, and now I need to put on some music and just be in the car with the air conditioner on and the slight sound so I could access my body and the sensations. And so in that place is that we get to, like, through coaching with Dolphin or Mike or Scott or me or your therapist, or, there's lots of access points that there's movement. You can have movement if you're courageous enough to take the step and to trust someone to take you.
Beautiful. Mike, Dolphin.
Mike, you look like you got something there. I have something too.
I always have tons to say, so I was trying to hold back because
tonight's show will be going for 3 hours. Everybody, I just want to go get an extra cup of coffee.
Easily.
Yeah.
Well, I would. So speaking to this conversation, I would say that creating the space for someone to be as empowered as they possibly can while accepting exactly where they are is really important in how I would work with people in this particular area. So what I mean by that is when you understand what's going on in the nervous system, you can recognize, okay, I'm having, for example, mobilized survival bodily cues. So that's elevated energy. I feel like I need to move. Anxiety. So mentally and physically, there's movement there. I know I'm in the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. There are certain tools that I can do and calm my system down. If I'm in an immobilized response, that's actually a higher level of stress. And when you're in that immobilized response, you have to bring yourself back down in a way where it looks like you're calm when you're in an immobilized response. But what's actually going on is your system is completely revved up to the point where it's kind of like a car with the brake and the gas on at the same time. And so it's actually exhausting. So what I'm getting at is if you know where you are on this map, and what I can do is I can pull up a chart here that's pretty helpful for understanding this. Let's see. Sorry, a different one. Okay, let's go with this one. There we go. Okay. That's coming up on the screen, yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Mobilization, and safety social engagement.
Yes. So you can figure out where you are on this chart, and then you can adjust appropriately. And so what this is doing is it's giving you an opportunity to become aware of where you are on the chart here in terms of how much stress. The higher you are on the chart, the more stress is in your system. And whatever branch you're in, if you look closely at immobilization, it's the dorsal vagal parasympathetic response. That's the reptilian response that has us shut down. And we not only are immobile in that space, so that's when you freeze, when you fawn, when you dissociate, when you're not aware of what's going on in your body, like when you're living from the neck up, very intellectual, or maybe you're spaced out completely and or even pass out. When you're in that state, you need to calm the system, but it needs a little bit of a kickstart. And so you need to get the system activated with the sympathetic branch, which is the next one down. Here's what's interesting about going from immobilization down into the mobilization zone. All of a sudden, all of the discomfort that you weren't feeling up at the top where there was more stress, you're going to start feeling it. And it's going to seem like you're getting worse. So if you know where you are on that chart, you can navigate appropriately. You can go, oh, I know that I'm going to start feeling whatever's underneath this shutdown response that I have. And if you've ever heard that saying, if you're going through hell, keep going, this is where it applies. Just keep on moving, And so it's, for example, in TRE that I mentioned earlier, there's this shaking response, like Trish was talking about when she got out of the car. That's a natural response to rebalance the body and integrate it when it's in an immobilized response. You have to have safety first. And once you do, the body will start to shake. And that's moving from the immobilized state down into the mobilized state. If you do it calmly enough, it'll bring you all the way down into the ventral vagal parasympathetic branch, which is the coherent, present, calm, socially engaged, cognitively viable. All our best attributes as humans are available in this space. And sometimes here, I'll bring up that chart one more time. If you look closely at the top of the chart there, as you go down into mobilization, all the way to the right, you see that squiggle going between the red zone and the yellow zone. That's what's known as the Ptsd cycle. So often addictive patterns will happen there, but also ADHD symptoms, for example. I'm immobilized when I'm spaced out. I'm shut down in a sense. And then my body's trying to recover. It's trying to go down into mobilization. Guess what? It gets hyperactive. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So that's just one example of what the nervous system is doing underneath these symptoms that are categorized in the diagnostic and statistical manual. And if we can understand what's going on underneath the surface, instead of looking at it like, oh, this is my identity. Some people have even said, I am ADHD, not just I have. Identifying with that as a label, you're not going to escape that. You're going to stay above and below that line of stress in the PTSD cycle. And the way to come out of it is to recognize, oh, I'm in this. It's okay. Where am I on the map? And let's bring ourselves down with the appropriate tool.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. Scott, can I just piggyback on what Mike said?
Please do. Please do.
Yeah, I love listening to Mike talk. We've had a couple of conversations. I hope we have lots more, Mike.
Likewise.
So one of the things that came up for me as I was listening to Trish and Mike speak is something that I call meta-awareness. I'm not the only person to use it or kind of coin it, but essentially meta-awareness is aware that you're aware of what's going on. And it's a really powerful realization. It's something that we touch or access when we meditate or do mindfulness practice. And to me, the experience of meta-awareness can be a kind of observer or dissociation practice. And I'm a bit critical of the observer as a final resting place of meta-awareness, because to me, the real power of meta-awareness is to be fully in our experience while we're aware that more than just our experience is occurring. The observer easily becomes a kind of intellectual sort of perspective, looking at what's going on and not being fully in it. So the meta-awareness to me is a powerful first step to realize levels of choice that until the meta-awareness is there, just are not available to us. We're not aware that we have a choice. And one of the things for me that unlocks meta-awareness is just a fundamental willingness to feel more. If I realize that there are unconscious patterns and experiences and memories sitting there in wait, ready for me to be with, and in spite of many of them being very difficult, that I actually want to be with all of that stuff, all of a sudden, I believe there's a kind of, I think there's a threshold between unconscious and conscious, and it's mediated by our level of meta-awareness. So when I become aware that I'm aware, that threshold becomes permeable and my unconscious begins to naturally arise into my conscious awareness. And anyone that knows transformation knows that it only occurs in the presence of awareness. Real transformation, conscious transformation must include awareness. So then you might ask, well, how do you get there if you've kind of tried, but you felt stuck? I believe one of the most effective pathways is to honestly explore core belief. And I do a lot of core belief work with my clients. And I want to share with you 2 core beliefs that for me are actually at the heart of all other dissociated or dysfunctional beliefs that we can hold. So I'm just gonna, like, this, to me, when I discovered these, it was profound, and I hope that they land for you. The first core belief that actually on a universal level is not true, that I think is at the heart of all other core belief, is something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Here's what I'll invite everyone that's listening to think about. What would happen if you held the belief that nothing is wrong? That's not a warm, fuzzy spiritual ideal. It's not to say everything is comfortable or pleasant or pleasurable or blissful. That's not what I'm saying. But what if there was a way of holding reality as it is, where the belief was it's actually okay as is? How that might shift or change things. And then the core belief that follows, which is really the core belief that prevents meaningful action in our lives, is it's not worth it. And so if we can come to those 2 core beliefs, and even if you don't believe me, just play with them. Play with the idea that there's actually first no problem, nothing wrong with reality as it is right now. And then consider the idea that it is worth it. It is worth it to feel more. It is worth it to engage life. It is worth it to stretch and be vulnerable. What would start to happen for you in your choices in relationship to your own unconscious, and then through that in relationship to your relationships with others? Like, how could that transform things? So, there's other tools I might use to work with core belief, but those pieces, using a kind of transformation of core belief to access and empower meta awareness, for me has been a profound transformational tool for myself. And I use it with my clients all the time.
I have a question for you, Dolphin. When you were talking about recognizing, moving into awareness, what are your practices for doing that? Do you like set aside meditation time? Do you listen to your body and recognize, okay, now's the time? And how do you manage the ego that's going to come up with 1,000 reasons why you should not go there now?
I'm a bit of a, I'm not a big, what's the word I'm looking for? I believe practices are helpful until we don't need them anymore. And I think a lot of people over rely on their practices. So I worked with athletes for years. And so there's these training sessions, and we're doing these very specific things that help the athlete and their nervous system and their ability to perform under pressure improve. And it's all great. And what I saw over and over and over again with athletes that underperformed in competition is they were trying to do something in competition. They were trying to perform. They were trying to do it right. They were trying to win. And when you watch an athlete in a flow state, when they're at their absolute maximum expression as an athlete, trying disappears. The sense of self disappears. The practice disappears. There's just full expression. And so for me, like the first thing I wanted to say was just that practices are amazing until we don't need them anymore. And then they're like a crutch that slows us down. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, I like to explore. So I've explored psychedelics. I've explored Vipassana meditation. I've explored, different forms of mindfulness practice. And ultimately what I've discovered is that it's like there's 1,000 doors. They're all going to the same place. And you are the active ingredient. Mm-hmm. So what matters more than a practice is your honesty and sincerity in your heart about like what's going on right now. So my favorite practice is look for tension in your body, and wherever you find it, take a breath and be relaxed in relationship to the tension. You kind of create like a bubble of relaxation around the tension. And that practice just reminds you that you have this, and that's meta awareness as well at work. You have this part of you that can be with the condition that's currently occurring. And by being with it in a more open, relaxed way, it opens and relaxes. And when we look at like, especially breathing exercises in relationship to like a stress response, practiced breathing responses help the biochemistry in the body and the nervous system begin to relax and regulate. I believe that it's actually I think it's a meta choice of just being with life as it is versus the breath work itself or the breath itself doing it. I think that's sort of, they work in parallel is really what I'm saying.
You know, I'm a big sports fan. Mike and I were talking about this before the show started. And one of my favorite athletes is Steph Curry, who's, for his sport, relatively short, relatively small, and is the greatest shooter of all time. And his whole, when he talks about it, it's what you talked about. His whole thing is relaxed focus. He has taken that shot from every possible place on the court so many times that his body knows exactly what to do. So his job is to be relaxed and let his body do what his body knows how to do. And it's such a wonderful analogy for what you're talking about. It's like not grasping, but being focused, not being lazy, being focused, being present, but relaxed presence. So thank you for that. I love that. Trish, how is Winston doing with relaxed presence there?
Winston's his attachment style's coming up, obviously. I was
Anxious.
He was yelling at me until I picked him up. Now he's sitting in front of me. So he's getting his love and affection, and he has learned to ask for what he wants effectively. Oh wow. Dolphin, Mike, you both are really just fantastic humans, and I'm so grateful for this session, this conversation. I just want to say that these two beautiful humans are admins for a group called Attachment Community. Not that, and in there they really, I've been watching your posts, and I've been really watching the way that you show up, and it's, again, speaking with you is so profound. So again, if you're watching and you like this, share it out to the people and get in touch with Dolphin and Mike. I'm going to push this because I'm really invested in kind of like a community conversation of like, how do we love each other better? Like it kind of comes back down to this point is like, living in the world today is kind of traumatic. I mean, again, I only know two people in my life who claim no trauma. They're just like, I have not experienced trauma in my life. I am not traumatized. And I'm like, okay, cool, and then yet they have, their own attachment, weird and stuff going. They got stuff going on. And I'm just sitting here as like, if you're assigned female at birth, the likelihood that you have some sort of sexual trauma is likely, and that they're going to have some hangups about it. And how can you love women better? Like, how can you love men better? And I've been thinking about this in the car today in relationship to this show, is like, is there maybe not, is there some community responsibility, but is there a way that we can help people become more secure relators while not taking it on in a codependent way? That's my question to you guys. Juicy, huh? Woo!
I love it. Scott, did you have something?
I was going to read a couple more comments because I always like to include our audience. So I'm going to Facebook, and so Kathy writes, "Thank you for all your input. I worked with a therapist on and off for 20 years, and they just medicated me. I didn't process the emotions of all the trauma. I've been off of the meds and working through what I can. Recently, I've been working with energy workers to help move the energy out of my body. It has been helpful to release so much energy that I wasn't aware of previously." So I'm really appreciating your vulnerability, and that's raises some interesting issues. Lorna Sass, thank you, Lorna, says amazing show, keeps getting juicier. Ruth Stierwell appreciated Trish's powerful share. And Mark Danisovsky thinks that 3 hours would be a good start for us. One other thing from Mark that he just wrote, he says, "One thing you're giving us right now is a massive dose of hope. We can acknowledge the feelings of being a failure in relationship and other parts of life, but we can move beyond it without just bypassing or being in denial." So thank you, Mark. Beautiful. So I always like to include our wonderful audience. It took a little while for them to start commenting, but now it's beginning to flow. So with that, and at some point, and I'm fine with going for a while tonight, if you all are, because this is deep. And we still have to get to Mike's charts. I'm very excited about Mike's charts. So take it away.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. There's a saying that I often find myself saying in workshops, when people were getting into physical spaces together. And that is, the workshop is in many ways, the best way to describe is a safe place to feel unsafe.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that a coaching relationship or a therapeutic relationship or a workshop or a retreat can be so transformational is because all of the things that we use to try to feel safe in a way aren't needed. Like, we know I don't need my armor here. And there's something about a sense of safety that allows us to step into the sensation of a lack of safety that is where our healing and resilience comes from. And so I just wanted to kind of frame my comment about community with that, because I think that's the best we can actually do for each other. First for ourselves, my own integration, my own embodied secure attachment is the best gift I can give, because then as I'm in relationship with others, that's what a well-attached, integrated parent does. They teach and support the baby and the child to learn what it is to attach well, to regulate well. And we think adults that we're different than that, but we're not. If you are surrounded by insecure people, the likelihood that you have an insecure nervous system is almost guaranteed. And if you spend lots of time with lots of secure people, over time, you will develop a secure nervous system. You know, like, are there anomalies to that? Maybe, but that's kind of how it works. So, you know, I think first, us being honest and sincere about our own path of integration and becoming secure in our relating. And, you know, one of the other things, I think I'll speak to what some might call anxious attachers. And that is, sometimes our best intentions are not good contributions to other people's growth and healing. And I think, you know, one of the ways that I would frame that is, I did a workshop with an incredible acting teacher, but she's more than an acting teacher. Her name is Carol Fox Prescott. And she does just incredibly beautiful work. If you don't know her, I encourage you to go check her out. And so we did this, it was like a 6-day intensive, and we did all sorts of beautiful, amazing, heart-rendering exercises. And constantly I heard her say the words, "Don't help." Someone would come into a kind of experience, an emotion, they felt triggered, they felt traumatized, they were upset, whatever. And some, like this, you could kind of feel the people congregating to like help, hold, protect. And she was consistent, don't help. Like, give people their space to be in what they're in. Now, of course, there is a time for us to come in and hold and love and nurture each other and to help, you know, clean up their wounds and all of that. But here's one thing that I'll give that I think it's actually another sport thing that I brought into my coaching, and that is in motor development, one of the most powerful tools we can use to teach effective movement patterns is something that I'm pretty sure it's called differential or variable learning. So instead of what you might think a coach would do, which is like show an athlete a perfect movement pattern and then say, do that 1,000 times. That's actually not the most effective way for the athlete to learn. What actually allows the athlete to learn that movement pattern best is to allow them to do the movement pattern on either side of optimal. So as an example, you might want an athlete to learn the exact right amount of knee bend to get maximum vertical jump. It's just a really common sport movement, jumping. And so instead of saying jump as high as you can, you tell the athlete, jump, and this time bend your knees a little bit more than you usually do. And then in the next one, bend your knees a little bit less than you usually do. And then go back and forth and just keep doing that. And the athlete, in their natural organic exploration of the movement, their body tells them when they hit the sweet spot. So and I like to bring that into another area, which is, if you're someone who constantly helps, who's always in there making it better for other people, spend some time not doing that. Spend some time being present to, but not involving yourself in someone else's process. If you're the person that's always on the outside, like, yeah, they're fine, no problem, no big deal, give yourself permission to engage more. Give yourself permission to give your gifts more than you have in the past. And dance on either side of what you might think is optimal. And what you'll discover is, intuitively in your own heart, in your own body, you will start to discover the right kind of contribution for each moment. And to me, like, that's a simple tool that has an ability to bring us to incredible levels of mastery when it comes to interpersonal relating, but also coaching, leadership, community development, all of that.
Beautiful. I love that. As a charter member of Rescuers Anonymous, Messiah Complex Unlimited, I can appreciate that. And it is true. There's that many of us, especially people that are therapists, coaches, caregivers, we're in it because we want to serve, we want to help, we want to support, and learning to pull back. And actually, honestly, at Love Coach Academy retreats, what we do is we establish right up front, no caretaking. Everybody is empowered. If you want support, please ask for it. But if somebody's crying, don't everybody congregate and start shoving Kleenexes at them. So anyway, Trish, do you have something before we get to Mike's charts?
Oh, I loved that. I loved Dolphin's take on community care. For me, it just looks like, really just like educating yourself on the people that you love. Like, hey, trauma-informed love, trauma-informed dating. You don't have to fix them. Just be with it.
Yeah.
Just like, how we be with our own things. And that's something that I wanted to share as well, is like, if you're caretaking, then giving yourself the opportunity to ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? And who's it for is one of my favorite questions. Who's it for? Are you caretaking me right now because you feel uncomfortable with my feelings, or are you caretaking, or, and so when I give that an opportunity to my clients, an opportunity to ask those questions as well. Because of course I know a lot of people who are people pleasers. I know a lot of people who are people pleasers in my practice. And it's like, all right, well, who's it for? And we really get to ask that question. And then I get to invite them to be able to hold space in a loving manner. And if they know that they're anxious when they want to people please, are they drawing in because they're uncomfortable? Or if they're avoidant, are they uncomfortable in avoiding the whole thing? Or if they're fearful avoidance, like just being able to like access those places of what is the, like, what is the discomfort, and can they be with the discomfort while being with another person? And again, who's it for? And yeah, just though, if I could say just one thing about community care, is really, can you be with someone while they are in their own discomfort without taking it on? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a part of the community responsibility. Again, I've been, diving into some intentional communities where they hold each other accountable for taking responsibility for themselves, for what they want, and how they impact other people. And it's been a really interesting thought process of like how my impact on another person, of like, oh, I'm, just sitting with, even though I have the best of intentions, my impact is actually pretty profound. And it's not me to say what my, like, oh, Dolphin, I have great intentions to people pleaser, to the, it's not for me to say the impact, and to be able to just be with Dolphin's experience about my thoughts, actions, behaviors, or my lack of presence or my over presence, and that's in one of the places of just being able to be with someone's discomfort while not taking it on. And rant.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. Mike, I'm putting the spotlight on you. We haven't heard from you for a few minutes.
So I'm so excited about all the different directions I could go. I clearly have more charts than we have time for realistically. But I'm thinking about some of the inquiries that we've been looking into. Like Trish, you were talking about, how do we empower ourselves and one another to collaborate in community more effectively, right? Looking at some of the comments about bringing hope into relationships. And all the different areas that we can improve our lives and improve how we relate to one another. To me, I must admit I'm a little biased here, but it comes down to nervous system regulation in terms of setting the stage, right? And so what I can do is bring up some visuals that give more of an idea of what's going on in your human experience, so that when you're looking at, okay, so for example, bringing hope into, making relationships go well in your life. I would start by saying, well, how would you define a great relationship? Is it the longevity of it? Is it the quality of connection you have with the other person? Is it the experience of knowing yourself more and more deeply in the process of relating to other people? Because we absolutely mirror one another, not just in a spiritual platitude sense, although that's a great thing as well. But literally, we have these things called mirror neurons in the medial area of our prefrontal cortex. And their job is to take on the body language of the people that we're interacting with. So someone commented just recently, sound healing is so powerful. Did you know that your state is so drastically affected by your own tone of voice? How you speak vibrates in your middle ear muscles in a specific way, and it changes your state more powerfully, actually, than hearing someone else. So think about that, how we're actually mirroring the response that we have to other people by how we react and the tone of voice that we have when we respond to someone else and how they affected us. And so I want to bring up an analogy that Sue Johnson talks about in her work in Adult Attachment. She talks about looking at personal growth work and how that impacts the nervous system. She does a lot of testing on individuals and couples and relationships, and looking at the neurological power of the experience of personal growth work. And in this analogy, she compares personal growth work where you're focusing on, okay, I'm going to process my emotions, I'm going to look at what's going on in my body, and so on and so forth. And all the work that I do there, you can compare that to a 20-watt flashlight. And that's in reference to when we engage in an attachment relationship. Comparatively, that's like the floodlights of a stadium in terms of neurological power. And that's both positive and negative. So that's why when you're in a deep bond with someone, they bring up your attachment system that was originally set up when you were developing your brain just after you were born. The third trimester of pregnancy into 18 months, 2 to 3 years, depending on what we're talking about, your brain is developing based on the interaction of body language with your caregivers. And so it sets the stage for how you respond in your adult relationships. That is elicited by the people you're bonded with most closely. So in an intimate relationship, you have an attachment bond. The difference is it's not parent to child. You're both mirroring the experience of parent and child. So you both have responsibility and you're both affected in a very powerful way. So in the beginning of a relationship, so powerful how positive the experience can be. And after you trigger each other enough times, the implicit memory builds up, and eventually, I would say a year, maybe 2 years in, it varies from person to person, you've built up enough of an implicit memory around things not going so well that they can brush their teeth the wrong way or make a noise, and you're just like, oh, I hate this person. You know, it's just like they can trigger you with the most benign things. It's really remarkable how that works. And that's because of how powerful the attachment system is. And so I'm going to bring up a couple charts to give a sense of what's going on in the nervous system. And what I'd like you to keep in mind when you're looking at these things, and I'm describing basically what it represents, is what is going on in you right now. That's one option. What is going on within you when you're by yourself, but also when you're relating to someone you're very close with. So as I bring up different examples of things that you can experience, put yourself in that experience and just notice what it feels like so you can connect with what's going on in that chart. Because the goal of showing you all of this, I mean, I could just go on and show you lots of information and it might not do any good. It might be slightly helpful. But when you take that on and go, okay, so I remember Mike was talking about such and such, and oh, I'm feeling this. That related to this part of the chart. Oh yeah, he mentioned this breathing technique's pretty helpful here. You can use that and change the trajectory of the quality of your relationships and your ability to regulate yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to pull up some of these charts here. And I'd like to go to a chart that's very similar to the one I showed before, where before you saw at the top immobilization. In the middle, you saw mobilization. And at the bottom, you saw safety. So this is the same chart, but it's just showing a different way of looking at it. So when you're at the lowest level of stress here, you're in coherence, you're able to socially engage with people. Someone smiles and you want to smile back. Someone says something loving and you feel that in your body. They compliment you perhaps. And that experience connects you to your own internal sensations. And also it gives you a window into what's going on in theirs. Because as they smile and then you smile back, you're sharing an empathetic experience. You're exchanging body language. Now, fast forward to what I was saying before about when you get triggered in a deep, intimate, bonded relationship, right? This is an attachment bond, and they breathe the wrong way, or they say something that you told them over and over again triggers you, and they did it on purpose, right? That's when we're going up into chaos. That's when we experience some of these emotions that are listed here. Maybe it's just concern, worry, but then it can go into anxiety, fear, panic. You might be frustrated, anger. You can experience all sorts of things, but notice that they all imply movement. It's the sympathetic branch, and your breathing is going to get shallow, and it's going to get up into your upper chest, and you'll probably use your mouth. And so the experience there is that you're in this chaotic state. What do you do when you're there? If you recognize that you're there, well, you're not too high yet. You're just in that middle zone. So you want to focus on calming yourself. So one thing you can do to calm yourself is to shift from your mouth to your nose as best you can. And you might even try this now, just putting a hand on your chest, upper chest area, and then one on your belly area around your navel. And as you breathe in and out, just notice where there's movement. Is the chest rising and falling? Is the belly going out and in? Can you feel the air in your nostrils or your throat? Where do you feel that breath most naturally? So whenever we inhale, we're elevating the stress response. I won't go into the physiological details of that, but whenever you exhale, it reduces the stress response. It lowers your heart rate 20 to 30 beats. That variation of breathing in and out and changing that heart rate is called heart rate variability. When it's balanced between the two, you achieve what's called coherence. And that's at the bottom of the chart where you're in social engagement. So if you're really elevated in your stress response and you feel like you want to hit your partner or you want to run out of the room, right? You have those feelings come up. Notice where your breathing is. Just focus in on the sensations and see if you can lengthen your exhale. So a simple way to do that is breathe in for, let's say 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you exhale, make it a little longer, maybe 5 or 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. And then inhale comfortably. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. And then exhale a little longer. 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. You would repeat that about 10 times, just as a quick example. And that's going to start to calm your nervous system. Now, if you're continuing to stay in the situation, you're going to continue to be re-triggered. Get yourself to a place where you can calm yourself. So if you're sitting there in front of your partner that's triggering you right now, probably not a good time to try that yet. It's probably not going to work so well. Get to a place where you can have calm, or maybe you agree together to do it, to do this breathing pattern. Like, oh, can we set this aside for a second? Because I think we're both in a space where we're not as calm as we'd like to be, or however you would say it, maybe more colorfully. And go ahead and let's go ahead and do this together, right? And as you breathe in that way, you can actually take this to another level. If you're feeling like you want to connect more deeply, go belly to belly, chest to chest with your partner and hold each other until you feel the other person relax. That accomplishes something very specific. If I can't let go until they relax, and they can't let go until I relax, you're both going to be relaxed before you stop this process. And in the process, what will happen is you'll start to attune to one another, and you won't even have to try. Your breathing will start to synchronize. And you will be in what's called limbic resonance. It's that limbic part of your brain where the emotions are processed, and we're in that same space. Limbic resonance happens in so many different ways. It's like when you're at a comedy show and everyone's laughing at the same joke. You're in limbic resonance. or some catastrophe happens and everyone's outraged. That's limbic resonance. We're all experiencing, sharing something together. And so let's give a quick example of if you were in the immobilized response. Let's say you've passed that state of chaos where you're and you're just exhausted. You're in immobilization. Maybe you tune out a little bit, or you get apathetic, or I don't really want to deal with this anymore. You want to just be alone, but you just feel exhausted. There are a lot of different variations on this. Could be show up as depression, for example. You need to wake the system up so you can come back down out of immobilization. So a great way of doing that, there are two techniques I like to use. One is a technique I learned studying a little bit of Wim Hof breathing. And what he does is he'll take a deep inhale like so, and then let it fall out. And deep inhale, open the chest, let it fall out. And just notice how many it takes to feel a shift in sensation, maybe in your chest, maybe in your solar plexus or belly. Sometimes it only takes one breath. Some people it takes 5, 6, 7, 8. Do as many as you need. And so you might notice if you do that a lot and you don't pay attention, you could hyperventilate. So notice what's going on in your body. Another technique for calming yourself is what I call pulse breath. Put your hand on your belly and imagine you're doing a spitball across the room. Pull your belly in as you forcefully push the air through your lips like this. People get embarrassed when I tell them to do this. Go in a room by yourself if you need to, but it will bring you out of that immobilized state. So you can just do a pattern of, let's say, 2 sets of 10. Make sure it's forceful. Make sure you're moving your belly. That will activate the sympathetic nervous system to bring you back down out of immobilization so you can feel again. And as I mentioned before, that's a space where you might be in touch with discomfort. Know that that will pass. As soon as you're aware again, then do the calm breathing. Use your nose, lengthen your exhale, and so on and so forth. So these are just a couple examples of how you can look at what's going on in the nervous system. I'll bring that chart back up again.
And Mike, there's a very specific question that's coming.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So this is from Jennifer on Facebook.
Yes.
And it's in reference to when you were talking about in long-term relationship, where little things people do start to bother you. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase Jennifer, but the bottom line is her husband's eating of cereal. The crunching sound is becoming more and more agitating to her. And she doesn't know what to do about it because he's eating cereal the way he always has, but it bothers her more and more and more. Now, obviously, did she start doing air spitballs or what? Seriously, what do you suggest?
Short term, those techniques that I mentioned will help a little bit, but what she's describing is a long-term change in the middle ear muscles. So there's a specific sound therapy called the Safe and Sound Protocol. It was developed by Stephen Porges, who came up with polyvagal theory, that bell curve that you see the different branches of the nervous system. He's the one who innovated that idea. And he came up with this sound therapy system called Safe and Sound Protocol. I used to do that therapy. My partner does. So if anyone's interested, you can reach out to me and I'll direct you to her.
Okay.
And what it does is it uses a specific frequency of music that's in the middle range. So when you hear a high shrill sound, think of that like a prey animal that's squealing and trying to get away. Think of the low rumble of the predator. In the higher the low frequencies, it tends to trigger the stress response. And so you can actually change that slacked middle ear muscle experience that you're probably experiencing with the sound therapy. So what I'm getting at is that that's not a quick fix. And you're going to want to go into depth on that one because it's not just the sound that's annoying you. Your whole system is in a perpetual state of a survival response. And so you're going to perceive the world differently, not only how you hear it, but you're going to be more easily annoyed. You're going to, if you're in the middle zone, you're going to want to do something about it, the fight or the flight response. And if it gets to the point where you just can't handle it anymore, you'll just get apathetic or depressed. These are all signs that you're up in the survival response. And like I said, there are these different things that happen in the system to adjust to what it thinks it needs to do. If we're actually in a situation where we're being chased by a tiger, the fight or flight system comes on and we sprint, we run out of there as fast as we possibly can. We can possibly fight it. If we have a weapon or something, we think we can we can beat the tiger, great. But chances are we're going to get to a place if we can't outrun a tiger. So in this, trigger warning, in this example, imagine that the tiger's about to get you. What's going to happen is your body's going to go into an immobilized state. It's going to shut down and it's going to collapse. Prey animals do this all the time. And there are actually some pretty cool nature videos you can pull up on YouTube where a cheetah goes after an antelope and it shows it in slow motion. And just as the cheetah is about to grab it by the neck, it actually collapses first. And the reason for that is that it won't struggle, and so it won't get hurt if there's an opportunity to leave. Well, what ends up happening is a hyena comes and starts to battle it out with the cheetah. And while they're doing that, antelope pops up, runs off. And it goes, interestingly enough, into a safe place, and it starts to shake once it's in a safe space. Interesting. We talked about this. So this is this natural process that happens, and your body does exactly what it needs to based on what it thinks the needs are for survival. So whatever triggered that experience initially, it's probably deep in the unconscious that had your middle ear muscle slack. Chances are it was way before your husband. And yeah, usually it's in childhood at a certain point, and it doesn't have to be something intense. A lot of people will say, oh, I had a great childhood. But the way the nervous system responds and the way we interpret it with our brains, they're two totally different things. So someone, could have an experience that to somebody else might look like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. Well, to that person, their nervous system responded in a way where it went into fight or flight and then collapsed. And if it doesn't get resolved in a safe space with a safe other and an attachment bond, that will stay there. The system thinks that it can't recover. So I hope that answered that question.
Yeah. I mean, Jennifer, I'm going to see how Jennifer feels. Trish wrote in the chat box, the last thing he heard was, I hate the way you crunch your cereal.
I'll send that to you privately.
This is true. Jennifer, I hope you don't mind, but it is interesting though. I mean, I love how honest that is. It's like how something as simple as crunching cereal. And I think it's really important because most of us, especially in long-term relationships, is things that other people do, our husband, our wife, our mother, our kids do, that drive us nuts. And we wonder, why is that driving me nuts? So I'm really appreciating, Jennifer bringing that up and your response.
Scott,
yeah.
Do you mind if I would love to just provide a different lens on that dynamic?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I came to this realization that everything in life is a metaphor. Like, absolutely everything. And if we had more time, I would love to get into a whole conversation around the nature of perception and how there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the way we see reality isn't just like a little sliver of it or not quite it. It's actually that reality is fundamentally different from what we perceive. And yet it's clear that our perceptions have a highly adaptive function, that we can make sense of the world around us and inside of us in a way that allows us to navigate whatever is occurring. And so what I would actually encourage, it was Jennifer?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I would encourage Jennifer to look at is, I would be curious, like, how's the relationship outside of the cereal? Like if it's like utopia and then the cereal's bugging her, then I would say like, yeah, check out the ears, figure out, like, do a diagnostic, whatever, like figure that out. But if there are pieces of the relationship or aspects of the relationship where there's a deep sense of disconnection or distance or animosity, then I would suggest there's a high likelihood that the irritation with the cereal is just a metaphor for something deeper that's operating, where there's a lack of satisfaction, a sense of maybe, things. I'll just say some things that I've, worked with people. If I was working with someone, these are things I would reflect and say, hey, tell me whether these are hitting the mark. If you feel like your partner doesn't take care and isn't sensitive to things going on around him, then the loud crunching of cereal could just be, again, a metaphor that reinforces your belief that he doesn't really care or doesn't take care. And I think you could start to attune to how are you in the relationship in general? How connected, how nourishing, how how supportive does it feel? And if there's no's to those questions, then
actually, Dolphin, we just got from Jennifer, bingo. Sometimes he's so oblivious.
Yeah. So yeah, great. So then I would say, so Jennifer, that's beautiful that the cereal drives you crazy, because what it's doing is it's turning the dial up on something that you haven't maybe voiced to him in a way where you've reached him, where he gets you and where you're at and what matters to you, and that there's an opportunity within the relationship for you both to go, oh yeah, like what's going on here where the way I'm operating doesn't work for you. Now, if you're in a relationship with someone who can't hear that, then that's a whole other conversation. And it's like, well, there's lots of work to do there. If you have a relationship where you can't bring something to the table and say, hey, this is really getting at me, I'd like to talk about it. Like, can we put some things on the table and let's work on it? If your partner isn't available for that again, that's sort of like another pathway of support or transformation that's needed. If he is willing to have a conversation with you, then again, the fact that the cereal bothers you is a beautiful signal to you that there are some unmet needs that you can give voice to, that not only allow you to have your needs met, but allow your partner to feel like he can do something that really matters to you, that makes a difference for you in the relationship. It's very likely that when someone is oblivious sometimes, it's not because they want to be oblivious. That develops because it's a coping for them, that not being oblivious has been difficult for them in their lives. And obliviousness is a kind of solution to that. So again, these are some of the pieces that we can start to bring compassion, meta awareness to, and then hopefully we can tap into the natural courage that's there in us to say the things that we most want to say to our partner and give room for them to be where they're at. I think another huge mistake we make is we say the thing that we've been longing to say, and there's an expectation that all of a sudden they're going to like respond and be the partner we want them to be. I think it's important for us to first take care of our own expression and then leave the partner free to be where they're at. And yeah, with the support of consistency and maybe coaches or workshops or other kinds of education, we can take our relationship from something that's very stunted and disconnected to something that's deep and rooted and meaningful. And I believe that because I've seen it so many times.
Beautiful. Since we're just in the awareness right now of Dolphin's genius, I want to go to his website. And it's a beautiful website. And it's evolvenowinc.com. evolvenowinc.com. It's a beautiful website. It's the first time I've seen it, Dolphin. It's really lovely.
Thank you.
What if you could crack the code on transformative communication to create, gotta go back to the slider, at the heart of authentic relationships? So what is some of the coaching, or what do you have? Do you work with couples, individuals? Do you coach other coaches? What do people, how can they get more Dolphin?
Yeah, definitely. Again, singles that have the kind of chronically struggled to create meaningful, stable relationships, and then couples that have hit a bit of a crossroads and know that they can make it all work, but they don't quite have the tools yet. Those are the two groups that I work with mostly. I do have some train the trainer programs in the works, but they're not ready yet. So if you're a coach and you want to kind of get in touch with me because you like how I kind of work or how I speak, there'll be a waiting list that you can join. So that stuff's all in the works as well. And I would just say, we talked about it at the beginning of the show where not every coach is for everyone. I think I'm the kind of coach someone wants if they know that they are at the center of their life. They are the central influence. They are the central responsibility in their lives, and that they're ready to step into that fully. And my magic, I think, is I've come to terms with what's hard about life, and I support clients in doing so through. It's just like like having a conversation with your best friend, and I happen to be able to walk next to someone and point things out that people tend to miss. And so it's like turning a light on a trail that you've been struggling to travel for a long time, and all of a sudden you start to see the signposts, you see the things you used to trip over, you look back and you recognize where you came from and why things are the way they are, and actually everyone has the answers. So I'm more of a facilitator than I am kind of delivering some divine information that people don't have.
Well, I'm really appreciating the information that you are providing. Is there anything you can or want to say about that secret project that?
Yeah, cool. So thank you for nudging me. Me and a wonderful business partner of mine that I know Scott and Trish and Mike all know, Stephen Rowland. So we've been working on a relationship-based education platform for the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's ripe. The fall is our target for launch. It's called RelationFlix. The URL will be relationflix.com, and it'll be a place for you to get just a huge amount of information from a diverse group of coaches and educators. And it'll just be a rich content ecosystem where you can do toe dips, you can learn about practices and techniques, you can do deep dives into things. And we just want it to be a one-stop shop for anyone that wants to completely transform and clean out relationships that maybe either haven't been what they've wanted them to be, or that they're good, but they know how much better they can be. So that's what we're up to, relationflix.com. And sometime this fall, it's all coming to the world. And once we launch it, for us, it's just the beginning. Like, we just have so many big visions for how we can create a space for people to learn and grow in relationship.
We're all really excited about it.
Totally.
Already, Stephen's been filming with all of us, and it's going to be the Netflix for relationships. So it's going to be, and you're going to be hearing a lot about it on all of my shows, because I'm going to want to have all the different teachers on our shows. And so Dolphin, thank you for being with us and staying longer wherever it is you are.
I'm in Vancouver right now.
In Vancouver, thank you.
And Mike's on the platform as well, just to let everyone know all of his brilliance today will be featured as well.
And speaking of Mike's brilliance, I've got a website that I got to go to. And this is one way to find Mike. And it's the website is airmidwellness.com, airmidwellness.com. And I guess if I go to coaching team, how do we find you here, Mike?
Just click on coaches, and I should be listed under Danielle, who is actually my partner in Holistic Fitness Lifestyle.
Got it. Okay. That's why I saw there's Danielle, your partner. She's beautiful, but where are you?
You know, they've been updating the website, and they keep moving where the tabs are. So unfortunately, that's where it was last I checked today. So
well, somewhere here is Mike. And
if you click the Tai Chi link, I teach a Tai Chi class online, and so I'll definitely be listed there.
Okay. Let's see.
But for some reason, the coaching tab had been moved.
Maybe our instructors. Let's try that. We are striking out here.
Come on, Mike.
There he is.
Oh, there we go.
All right, we found him. All right. You know what? Maybe why don't you pop maybe your email address into the chat box here, and I'll also put it on some of our Facebook pages.
Happy to. Sure.
I am not taking on extra clients right now. My plate is full. Trish, are you accepting?
Well, I'm actively restructuring my teachings based on a really powerful course that I recently took on. It's called Heal Thyself, the transformative initiation for people racialized as white. And I'm really restructuring everything that I'm doing based on the information that I got from this course. And so I'm taking clients on a very specific basis, but I'm restructuring everything. You can go to that website if you'd like. It's called the Remember Institute. And I highly advise and recommend this course for anybody who was, again, racialized as white. I think it's a really powerful look at a different realm of reality. And it was really profound for me. And I'm seeing where my work can be more transformative and more impactful and really significantly more loving in the world now that I've seen what I've seen.
And I recall that, so if people go to the rememberinstitute.com, where we're struggling here to open up certain pages. If you'll go to the rememberinstitute.com and go to courses, the very first one on the far left is the open house. So it's a permanent online way of getting an introduction to the wonderful work that Reverend Bridge Feltis is doing. We've had Reverend Bridge on our show a couple times now. And thank you, Trish, for putting your own personal side aside and promoting this work. And I really respect so much how Trish has transformed in front of my very eyes, and how committed to learning this and applying it you are. It's very, very beautiful.
Well, I mean, it's impactful to see the world from a very different angle, I think, and to know that I can show up more lovingly. And if I didn't do that, they would be wildly out of my integrity. And I'm unwilling to live in authentically. I'm just unwilling. I don't do that anymore. And I just stand for loving better. And that's the piece. So as I've been taking the last few weeks of really looking at how to love better and what my work looks like, and how to really calibrate and dial. That's what I'm doing right now. So keep a lookout. I'm working on it.
Beautiful. I'm going to open it up for everybody gets a chance for one last thought, anything you want to share. Mike.
So I just wanted to clarify where I'm coming from in coaching by talking a little bit about my background. I didn't go into a lot of the details, but if you've ever heard of the ACE score, the Adverse Childhood Experiences, I measure as a 9 out of 10. And so that statistically usually would mean somebody like me would end up addicted, homeless, in jail, all sorts of things that did not happen. I was lucky enough to have some angels show up in my life. And my point being that being deep in the survival response most of my life, I know that from a personal perspective. And having overcome so many pieces of that, where I come from in supporting my clients speaks to how I've been able to and not able to receive support when in a survival state. So more or less, I've tried a lot of different things, but the theme that keeps coming up is that when the survival state is triggered, despite all of the things that I know I should do or say or how I should behave, it's become very clear that when in a survival state, that's not something I can fix with my mind if the body is not receptive. So what I've learned to do is switch the mode that my nervous system is to create receptivity so I can get the clarity I need to know where I want to go. And that's where working with somebody like Dolphin would come in, because he works with people who know where they want to focus and what they want to do with their lives. And he can get very specific in that. Where I come in is before that. If you have no idea how to manage your life, if it's in chaos or you're thinking, I'll never change, this is just how I am, I can show you how to change that possibility, because I haven't even scratched the surface of all of the things I've overcome. And there's still a lot of problems I'm working through as I'm healing one piece at a time, or transforming, or however it feels best to frame it. And I just want to clarify that so that whoever might want to reach out to me that might think, yeah, but I don't really know where I want to go. Perfect. I can help you find clarity in that by showing you how to navigate your nervous system, to become aware of what your body is telling you, to create the receptivity where the answers just come to you when you're in that receptive state. And I can't say enough about the transformative experience that is when you accept where you are, become aware of what's going on, and shift it in a way where you're not resisting that inner beast, that survival part of yourself. When I've resisted it, oh man, it has not gone well. It's not led to a lot of progress. And I know that intimately well. And I just thought I'd put it out there for anyone who might feel, yeah, I don't even know where I would start.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
And for anybody who's just listening, and I want to again acknowledge the majority of the people who are going to watch this show, are going to watch the replay. You can email Mike to reach him at holisticfitnesslifestyle@gmail.com. holisticfitnesslifestyle@gmail.com is a good way to reach Mike. So thank you. Dolphin, do you have any last thoughts?
I've really enjoyed being here. This is the longest time I've had to spend with you and Trish. I just really appreciating. It's clear to me that when we come into someone else's space, especially kind of a space they've curated or created, the historical reality is there in the present, and so like I can just feel the way you two work, the way you move together. Where you're coming from, your kind of why you do what you do. It's just in the space that we've shared today. I really appreciated the time. I'm someone, I think I'm the best when I'm playing off of people. And so, it's sort of like, hey, talk about yourself. It's not really my jam. But I think what I want to finish with is, we can look through our own history and through human history and just endlessly find how life works. Now, if we've had a really rough go, that's not the story we tell. There's another narrative that plays. But if we're willing to soften our grip on that narrative, life is working all around us and all the way through us. Like my education background actually started in kinesiology and physiology, and when you learn about the human body and what's occurring in the cells and the tissues and the organs and the systems, it's staggering how intelligent our bodies are. And so I think what I would say to anyone that's listening, and whether they feel like they're excited to get going or continue, or maybe they feel like, wow, there's just no way it's going to work. Life wants it to work. Life is inviting it to work. And the best place that we can be to engage it is a kind of willingness to be wrong about the negative stuff we've told ourselves, to be wrong about the limitations we believe are there, and then to practically populate our lives with people, places, and experiences that remind us of that. And I'll just, one more dimension to that is that's not easy. If abuse and trauma and negativity have been the norm for us, there's actually a way in which we've identified with that. And so picking a healthier relationship or a healthier environment can actually feel terrifying and painful. And so that's where the willingness comes in. It's like we have to be willing to step into something that feels hard and painful, but on a deeper level, we know that it's the way. So just inviting people to tune into that part of them that is whole, that does work, and start small and just build from there.
Well, even though we're wrapping up, I've got to riff on that for a minute because there were so many nuggets. And so I want to emphasize 2 points that I'm hearing from you, Dolphin. One is that listen to our body and trust our bodies, and don't think that there's something wrong automatically, but okay, what's really happening here? Matt Kahn is one of my favorite speakers, and he's been on my show several times, and that's his whole teaching is that everything that happens is actually here for our benefit if we can just see it that way. And it's not just airy-fairy new age bullshit. It really is, but it requires then going through an existential crisis, because when we believe that that's just the way men are. Men are going to hurt me. And all of a sudden we're with a nice man, we're having an existential crisis. Oh my God, what if this belief that I've been carrying for so long, based understandably on my experience so far, isn't actually true, or isn't always the case all the time. And being willing to go through the existential crisis of changing our beliefs is really, really important. And that's something else that I heard you say that I just wanted to riff on, because that's a very big part of transformation, is being willing to recognize, wow, that's a belief that I had. Can I change it? Can I let it go? Can I let it adapt or amend? You're in good company. Einstein has that great quote, and I'm paraphrasing, that the true measure of intelligence is how quickly we can change our beliefs.
Mm.
Trish, do you or Winston have any final thoughts?
God, he's if I pick him up, he stops yelling at me. You know, I love how you three really hold the compassionate space for what is in the world, and how the body relates to its own experiences. And you know, Dolphin, I love that you ended with that piece, because that was the hardest piece for me in the transformation. In my own personal experience, was I learned that certain abusive behaviors was love. That's what so I sought those experiences out. And in that sense, when I started to move from like the weird, manipulative, fawning, people-pleasing stuff into more secure relating, it was so fucking uncomfortable. I was like, this is just not right feeling. And when it occurred to me is that the names of the feelings that I had given or was taught to feel, like, you know, anxiety or anxiousness, was actually just excitement, like just a lot of excitement. And there were things that I had to rename and repattern in my own being. And so I love that you ended on that piece, because we have to remember that as we transform our perspectives or our feelings or our bodies, and what Mike brings in is like, when we embody these experiences, is that it's a practice, and you're going to learn and practice and grow and do all the things. And then you're going to grab more tools, and then those are going to become the practices. And it's this evolution, right? And I love that you both, and you three and Scott, just are really so like strong and founded in your work of being with. So I'm grateful to spend the last 2 hours with you three in your loving, compassionate, beautiful awesomeness. And the last thing that I want to just personally add in is there's a couple things that are my guiding lights in the world. And if you ever want to know, if you ever want to know if you're projecting or what's going on, ask yourself, who's feeling the feelings? And one of the pieces for me to really acknowledge, you know, there's this place that we, you know, project our upset on others. Like, oh, Scott's an asshole. I'm not saying you're really like, oh my God, Scott's an asshole. He's so weird. And who's feeling the feelings? I'm feeling the feelings. So who's expressing the experience? And it's me, because Scott's just chewing his cereal or, you know, doing whatever it is that Scott does. And I'm having the experience. So it's my beliefs and my understanding of the world and my values and my needs that are coming up in the world. It's really the experience, again, taking responsibility for the self and for my own experience and who's feeling the feelings. And that really gives us an opportunity to be in compassion with another person in their chewing or in their being handsome with your long flowing hair, Scott. Oh yes, I know. And the last beautiful piece is something that I've been developing and really sitting with, is my redefinition of love. And everyone has their own experience of love, right? Of what it is for them. And for me, throughout all of these years, what it now looks like is the radical acceptance of what is. And when I when I'm looking at someone and I'm judging them, or when I'm judging myself, or when my clients are judging themselves, it really just like the slowing down piece. When we've gotten to the point of like, who's feeling the feelings? I can take responsibility here, but can I really love myself? Can I accept myself in this place of compassionate, just being withness? And that's what I wanted to end with today.
Beautiful. I'm so grateful I get to teach and partner with you once a week, at least. Thank you, Trish. I just want to remind everybody about tomorrow night's show, Saturday Night Alive, the Global Peace Tribe. It is the 20th anniversary of the September 11th tragic events. And we're really going to be acknowledging it. We've got some amazing wisdom keepers. Andrew Harvey, who I think is one of the most important voices on our planet. I am so grateful for Andrew in our world and in the Saturday Night Alive world and in my life. We also have Rabbi Michael Lerner, Hazel Henderson, Dr. Kurt Johnson. These are incredible human beings that are true wisdom keepers. So please join us for our show tomorrow night. It's easy to register. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com, and you can register. And looking forward to working with you, Dolphin. Mike, great to meet you. I know you're somebody.
It's such a pleasure.
Oh, definitely want to work with you, and we will all be relation flexing together. And I know a lot of people are thanking us that, have stuck with us. So lots of thanks. And for those, whether you're watching us live or on Facebook or in the Zoom room, or most of you who are going to watch the replay, share this with friends. This is a great way. We're providing a lot of wonderful stuff for you free of charge. So go to Mike for coaching or for the Dolphin, or share this out, post this on Facebook, or send it to a friend who's looking for how to manage trauma. That's a wonderful way you can pay it forward. Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening. A pleasure to work with all.